topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Alise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015 already. Thanks for tuning in this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. If we have not met before and you don't know me, I'm a workforce advisor, organizational psychologist, management consultant, speaker, and author. And my team and I at Gusto now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building a dynamic, high-performance culture, inspirational leadership, and nurturing managers activated by meaning and purpose. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or my personal site, alisecortez.com. Today we have with us Stephen Post, PhD, a public speaker, social philosopher, and scholar in health and social sciences, philosophy, and global spirituality, as well as an opinion leader, mentor, and educator. He currently serves as director of the Center for Medical Humanities, Compassionate Care, and Bioethics at the Stony Brook University Renaissance School of Medicine, and has amassed an incredibly full and distinguished career prior. He is the author of Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the Seven Paths to Inner Peace, which we'll be talking about today. He joins you today from Stony Brook, New York. Dr. Post, a hearty welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you, Alisa. It's nice to be with you.
It's wonderful. As you know, I loved your book, and I've been looking forward to having you on here to talk about it and share with my listeners across the globe. So let's start with, since they haven't read the book yet, and I have, let's start with why you wrote this book and what's its promise.
The world seriously needs love because we're so divided and we've forgotten how to smile and how to laugh and how to have a warm heart. So I wanted to write this book at this time, although I've been working on the topic for as long as I can remember, even 30 years, 40 years. I've written a number of books about love and kindness and so forth, but this one I think is the best of them all. It's written with a certain kind of depth and power and authenticity. It's written for the moment. And I love writing. I love writing things that will do good for the people who read it.
Works for me. And yes, we do need this right now in the world, desperately, badly. So I am looking forward to being able to share what you have written here and hope that it will land in our listeners and viewers in a way that starts to really open their hearts and connect them. But let's talk first about calling. It's fascinating to me that you found your calling at age 17. And obviously it's very clear to me by reading your book that you've been cultivating it for a long time, along with your own spirituality, your peace, your understanding of various expressions of the ideas. And I love that you understood it, and you also had to really negotiate with your parents to let you to convince them to let you go after it. So let's hear the story of how you discovered your calling so early.
Well, there is an origin story to this, and it's an interesting one. Even when I look back on it now, I'm a little bit surprised. I went to a high school in New Hampshire, in Concord, New Hampshire, and at the age of 14, I was tutoring young French Canadian kids who came from very destitute backgrounds. And I enjoyed it so much. And I knew early on that I wanted to be a teacher, which is remarkable for someone that young, but I just knew it and I had a lot of support. So life went on. But then when I was 17, I finished high school and I was home. My mentor had found me a job that summer in the Bronx, And my parents were completely set against it because they thought it was much, much too dangerous. Actually, of course, I, being an adolescent male, didn't believe it was dangerous in the least.
Right.
But nevertheless, uh, we had some knockdown, drag out arguments about this for at least several days. And I was headed to Swarthmore for college. And my mother, ultimately, she said, "No, Swarthmore, I'm not paying a penny for that if you insist on this job in the Bronx." And my father, who'd been a lieutenant commander in the Navy and has a very strong personality, he supported her. So really, at the end, I relented and I said, "Now, Dad, what can I do? What can I do this summer?" And my dad, who was the president of W&J Sloan's department store on Fifth Avenue, he said, "You can work in Bill DeBono's lampshade factory," which is in the town of Patchogue on the South Shore.
Really close to what you wanted to do. Really
Very close, very close. I lasted for about 2 weeks. I drove my dad's secondhand gray Mercedes 190, which has seen much better days, to Patchogue every morning early. And I worked cutting cardboard between two very largely shaped Italian women, very nice. And Bill DeBono would look over our work with his cigar. And eventually, after 2 weeks, I realized I just am not going to do this. So I drove out to West Hampton, which is the east end of Long Island. And there, I met with some of my friends, and I decided that I was going to go west because I'd had a dream about going west. And this was very much in my mind and on my heart. So late one night, I took that Mercedes. It was a Saturday night, and I just drove due west through New York, through Manhattan, that is, and over the George Washington Bridge. And there I saw two signs. One said Route 80 West, and the other said 95 South. I knew I was going west. It was intuitive. And that's how I got my start. So as I stopped in the middle of Pennsylvania at the Lewisburg exit, because the generator for this car had fallen apart. There was no place I could go. There were no gas stations around, no telephone booths. So I wrote a note to the Pennsylvania State Police, which is in the book.
Yes, it is. It's fantastic.
I wrote in pencil, by the way, because I wanted to hear the graphite rolling.
Understand. Yep.
To the Pennsylvania State Police. Please return this car to Henry A.V. Post, 44 Davison Lane East, West Islip, New York. Phone number 516-669-5655. From his son, Stephen, who no longer works in the lampshade factory.
That's such a great story.
And that's how I got my start. So I hitched a ride out to Chicago in a big white truck. And then I had a ride with a van full of hippie types. And when I got out to Omaha, Nebraska, one of them said, "So you better call your mother. She must be worried stiff." And I did. I got out along the highway and I called collect to my mother. She picked it up and she said, "Oh my God, Stevie, you're alive. We thought you were dead." And then she said, "I can call off the Pinkertons." Now, this is really very adolescent. I said, "Mom, why did you call the Pinkertons? Didn't you get my note?"
That you left for the state police. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I won't go into the details, but eventually I made it out to San Francisco that summer. And I went up to Oregon to Reed College. And that was really the beginning. I just knew that I had to put my foot down. My mother eventually recognized that they probably should have let me just take that job in the Bronx. It would have been a lot easier than Dad having to go out to Pennsylvania, but such is life. So I did fine, and I can't say too much more about it. But the point is, when you feel you have a calling, and I felt I had a calling, sometimes you have to really fight to stick with it. You know, what is a calling? For me, the first chapter of this book, May You Give and Glow. It's how elated people feel when they contribute meaningfully to the lives of others using their talents creatively. And of course, that's nice if it's sporadic, but if you can get to do that every day of your life and blur the line between work and play, then you have a calling. Then you've found your calling.
Mhm.
And I've been teaching in medical schools for 40 years, University of Chicago, Michigan, Case Western for 20 years, Stony Brook for 17 years now. And every day I come into my office and I feel elated. I have a helper's high
Mhm.
because I know I'm doing what I want to be doing and I feel that I should be doing.
Mhm. I so celebrate that, Dr. Post, and I really appreciate that you had the wherewithal and the courage and the capacity to push back on your parents. There are so many people who don't do that. I meet them then in their 40s and 50s, and they are then wanting to start over, really pursue what really matters to them, and that's a whole different way. I'm grateful that they get there, but maybe it's a little bit cleaner route if you can just do it when you know you're already convicted at a younger age. So
Yes.
celebrate that you just had that conviction and you just went for it against the odds.
Against the odds. And that story did live on in my family for a long, long time.
It's neither here nor there, but I'm from Oregon. We say Oregon,
Uh,
and I really wanted to go to Reed College, and when I was younger, so I lived a little bit vicariously through you through that experience. But that aside, so you told the wonderful story of how you knew what your calling was and how you began to pursue it, and now you spent 40 some years in it. We would be remiss if we didn't start this conversation about your book, defining about what you mean by pure, unlimited love. What is that?
Well, there are two definitions in the introduction. The first one is unlimited love. What is love, basically, in the sort of ordinary, everyday human sense? And I borrow a little bit from a psychiatrist from the University of Chicago named um, uh, Harry Stack Sullivan.
Yes.
And he was very bright. He did amazing things. And he had his struggles, but he defined love as follows: when the well being and the security of another is as real to you as your own, and sometimes even more so, you love that person.
Mm.
So that seems pretty workable. It doesn't rely on ancient languages. It's fairly matter of fact. You could use it with an old friend in Starbucks who's having a hard time. You could do it with your kids as they grow older and have to figure out life. But that's basically what I use as a definition of love. But then what about pure, unlimited love? That's a different matter.
Hmm.
So as I was sitting in this office with Jeff Trilling, who was a wonderful colleague of mine, he just retired, I asked him, what's your definition of pure, unlimited love? And he thought very carefully about it. He was a nephew of Lionel Trilling, the editor of the New York Review of Books.
Mm.
So he had a way with words.
Mm.
And very carefully he said, pure, unlimited love is the first thing you will see when you close your eyes for the last time, hopefully.
Mm.
So that gets into the metaphysics that somehow love is an ultimate reality. And because you're a businesswoman, among many other things, you might want to know that I had a lot of mentoring from Sir John Templeton, the investor.
Mm-hmm.
And Sir John died in 2008 in Lyford Key. And as he was dying, he realized there was a book that he wanted to write. He'd written some books over the years, but he was not going to have an opportunity to write it. So his son, Jack, who was a pediatric trauma surgeon at CHOP, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, called me on my flip phone. I was on Route 80, by the way, in New Jersey when he called. And he said, Dad is dying. I said, Jack, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? And Jack said, well, actually, there is. Dad has a favor to ask of you.
Mm.
He wants you to write a book, which he will not be able to write. And I thought, carefully about it, because that's a fairly audacious thing to do. And I said, did he give you a title, Jack? And Jack said, yes. Ultimate reality is unlimited love.
Mm.
And I was in the medical school at Case Western, and I thought about that for a moment. And I said, could you go back to his bed and ask him if we can get a question mark at the end of that? Because it would take a little of the pressure off me. So, plausibility is easier than proof. And so I waited a minute, and Jack came back and he said, yeah, Dad says, is ultimate reality unlimited love, question mark. And I went ahead and in a couple of years, I wrote that book and published it with the Templeton Foundation Press.
Mm.
And it was really true to Sir John's thinking. He trusted me with that because we'd spent a lot of time together. And so that's a wonderful thing, to be entrusted with someone's legacy in that way.
It certainly is. That is so beautiful. And what a wonderful way. Let's let our listeners and viewers reflect on why you wrote this book, why it's so important, and let even that definition of pure unlimited love sink in a little bit while we take our first break. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. We've been on the air with Dr. Stephen Post. He's a public speaker, social philosopher, and scholar in health and social sciences, philosophy, and global spirituality, as well as an opinion leader, mentor, and educator. We've been talking about where this book came from and why it's important to him. After the break, we're going to start diving into those 7 paths that he talks about in his book. We'll be right back.
Dr. Alise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Alise to speak to your organization, please visit her at alisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Alise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Alise, send an email to Alise, A-L-I-S-E, at alisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us, and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. As I am dedicated to helping create a world where organizations thrive because their people thrive. They're led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness, and we do business that betters the world. I keep researching and writing my own books. So one of my latest came out called The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help leaders understand today's diverse and discerning workforce. What do they want from you? And then I give you 22 best practices to equip you to provide that through your leadership and your culture. You can find my books on Amazon or wherever you buy your books, or my website, alisecortez.com. If you are just joining us, my guest is Dr. Stephen Post. He's the author of Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the 7 Paths to Inner Peace. So before we dive into some of these paths, I want to situate for our listeners and viewers how you did this. So you provide our 7 paths, and then you then let us delve into each of these paths through your wheel of love,
Yes.
which has 10 forms of love and why they're so important to healing. And I want to just call out that one of those, which we can, as we go along, we can talk about a few of them, but one of my favorites of the wheel of love is the carefrontation. I just think that, and in fact, I already shared that with somebody that I've been coaching for a while, Dr. Post, and they loved it as well. So I just want to call that out. And as we're going through as many of these paths as we can get to and talking about them, bring them to life, I would love for you to share your choice of one of those wheel of love applications as we go to kind of help bring the path to life. Yeah?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. You've already talked about the first path, which is give and glow. And I love that. I love the whole idea of, being able to give in a way that causes you to glow. I just love that. I don't know if you want to say anything else about that. You've already kind of mentioned it, but it's up to you.
Well, it's just a wonderful notion because so many people suffer with the mistaken assumption that everything is transactional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Give and glow frees them. It allows them to realize that they have within themselves a certain natural affinity for kind giving, and that if they can stay in touch with that, they will be happier and healthier, and they will probably, as we've shown, live longer.
Mm.
So there's nothing wrong with that. It's all positive, and you don't have to count the paybacks.
Mm. Yeah, it feels, you reminded me just very quickly, on the 4th of July last year, I was out with my 22-year-old daughter, and we were having a meal, and there was this a woman with her two children, and they appeared to be like 4 and like maybe 8 or 9 or something, and the little girl was drawing a picture, and he was reading this one of the books that I've read. I forget what it's called, but it's a very challenging book for adults as well, for alone. Anyway, I came up and chatted with them and just said something about her drawing, and she just lit up. And it's not hard to make someone's day, right? And so we left the restaurant. I paid the tab, and then all of a sudden, the little girl bolts out of the restaurant, and she runs up to me, and she's waving this little piece of paper. She said, "I drew this for you. I drew this for you." And I looked down, and it was a picture of me, apparently, and her. And so I said, "Can I give you a hug?" And she said, "Yes." And so it turns out that they were from Korea, and the woman was here to join her husband. But that was just a simple example of this, right? And I got so much goodness out of that. And it was not a difficult thing to do at all. Beautiful.
It is beautiful. And one of the things I was very fortunate to be involved with when I came to Stony Brook from Case Medical School, it was the summer of 2008. And that was just before the financial downfall.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so 2009 was a tough year.
Yeah.
And I was contacted by United Health because they wanted to do a survey of adult Americans.
Mm.
And they asked them, how often did you volunteer? This was in early 2010. Looking back, how often did you volunteer in 2009? And 41% had done volunteer work. How much? Not a whole heck of a lot, 100 hours for the whole year. If you break it down, that could be an hour or two a week, not huge. And then we asked them questions in positive psychology about how that made them feel. So 73% said, lowers my stress levels.
Yeah.
89% improve my well-being. 92%, and here is purpose for you, 92% enriched my sense of purpose in life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
68% volunteering made me feel physically healthier. Recovery from loss and disappointment, 78%. It's amazing, actually. And they were freed from a lot of anxiety and feelings of helplessness. So we did a study of widows and widowers who had been happily married, but now they were struggling a bit with not necessarily depression, but they were having to adjust to a new life, and it wasn't so simple for them. And it turns out that the ones who could self-report that they were helping others in their neighborhoods or maybe in their vicinity, their hospitals, the Alzheimer's Association, whatever it might be, they were getting through this process of grief and bereavement a little more quickly and in a little more lasting fashion.
Yeah.
So I got a call from the New York Society of Widows and Widowers, there is such a thing. And they said, we're having our annual talk in Manhattan, and why don't you come in and speak with everybody? So I came in, I gave a plenary address about this study. And at the end, there was a guy in the back of the room. There were a lot of people there, and he started waving his hands quite frantically. And he said, I don't care what you say, buddy. I don't do nothing for nothing.
Mm.
And there you have it. And what I realized was that he was so caught up in that attitude. I said, are you happy? He said, no, I've never been terribly happy. So we talked about it for a while, and I don't know what happened to him, but it just shows you that sometimes people are so caught up with this idea of you have to get back in order to justify giving, or else you're just a sucker. They're so caught up in that it hampers them and keeps them from discovering their deeper selves.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talk about that in the book. I remember that story. That's interesting. Well, do you want to share something from the Wheel of Love that would help bring that one to life?
Well, the wheel of love, there are 10 expressions of love. I get up in the morning and I pray for half an hour. I meditate a little bit and prep myself for the day. Then I drive down Route 25A on Long Island to get to Stony Brook Medical School, which is where I am right now. And I'm being intentional about what form of love I want to bring to my office, because I have people I'm responsible for. And I can't just talk about love, because it's sort of, what kind of love are we talking about? Love of chocolate, designer jeans, you name it. So you have to navigate that. But once you start talking about the expressions of love, it becomes very easy. And you have a real practical, concrete leadership philosophy. So I'll go with carefrontation.
Okay.
Sometimes, one of the people I work with has just sort of gotten off track. They're going away from what I know is their better half. And I don't want to be confrontational. I don't believe in the idea of tough love, because it usually doesn't work.
Yeah.
But carefrontation works. And I didn't invent that term myself. I have to fess up about that.
Scott Peck. Yes.
M. Scott Peck, who I'd been at Case Western Med for 20 years. He graduated from there before I got at Case, and he wrote a great book called The Road Less Traveled.
It was the first book that I read that left a major impression on me. Yes.
That's great. And he uses the word carefrontation. So up here in my cabinet, I have a whole file of letters between Scotty Peck and myself. And he tells me, you need a form of love that straightens people out in a loving way. And it's not confrontational, but it's something deeper. So he said, I give you permission to use my word, carefrontation. So I have that in writing and it's signed. But yeah, carefrontation is an art form. And I'm in a department of preventive medicine too. So a lot of patients come in here and they have challenges in life that they need to correct. And what you have to do is, very respectfully, you have to ask them, are you ready for change? And if you are, what would you like to try to do? Give them a chance in a caring way to feel loved and engaged autonomously as they figure out how they can solve some of their problems. And then I ask them to write it down and come back in a couple of weeks, which works. So carefrontation is an art form, and we need it. People have gotten so confrontational in our culture. It's hard to imagine that some of our lives could go on in this sort of an environment at all.
Right.
So we either get to carefrontation as an expression of love, or we're out of business. Now, sometimes people have a great calling, but they get diverted. They get tempted by something with a little more money, or maybe a little more prestigious institution. Mm-hmm. And that takes some carefrontation, because those are the things that really take people away from their true callings.
Indeed. Well, what I have found interesting about that, using that idea with the people that I work with, the leaders that I'm out to develop, is when they think about, well, I need to have a conversation with somebody because maybe they're not performing as well as I need them to, or I need them to come back closer to the mark, or whatever it is. What I already love about the idea of carefrontation is, if you have that in your mind, what you're essentially saying is, I want to have a conversation with this person because I care about them. So that's the centrality of it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you have that feeling of, oh, I have to discuss this, I have to confront this person, that's negative. So I
Yes,
really love the idea that you're going to have this conversation because you care about this person. And I think that's a very different way of relating with love to somebody who you're out to help elevate, certainly from the vantage point of leadership.
exactly. Couldn't be more the case.
Well, there are many, many others. I want to get through as many as we can here, but I do wonder if you can distinguish. We were talking about this first path to love, as which was give and glow. Your another path that you distinguish is may you heal with kindness. How is that one different from give and glow?
Well, it's related. A lot of these things are related.
Hmm.
But I'm in a hospital setting here right now, and I've been in medical settings for most of my life. And people come into medical school because they really want to be kind and caring and compassionate and take good care of people who are otherwise vulnerable.
Hmm.
And sometimes they lose that quality. Um, they get routinized, I call it.
Hmm.
They go through the routine, the motions
Hmm. Hmm.
of helping patients, but they lose all the energy of love because love heals. And so you can heal with kindness. You don't need to be a doctor or a nurse or have any degrees at all. That's important. Just our tone of voice, the way we interact with people, that is how we can heal the world. And that begins with us. It's not easy sometimes to keep up with it, and you have to do some kind of practice. That's why meditation, mindfulness, prayer, depending on your tradition, can really be helpful if you're thinking about how to maintain that attitude in your heart. So I love it. And all the best doctors I've ever known, and I've known a lot of great doctors, they've been known for their kindness,
Hmm.
for going the extra mile. A little
Hmm.
story there about Joe Foley,
Hmm.
who was the most famous neurologist of the 20th century, came from Harvard to Case Western. And he was my mentor there. He's the one who got me there. And Joe would take his students, his residents studying neurology, into a patient's room. First, he'd knock on the door. He'd tell them to make sure that the patient was clothed.
Hmm.
Then they would walk in, and Joe would sit down, making eye contact with the patient at their level, and he would ask, "Is there something that I can do to make your stay in this hospital, in this University Hospitals of Cleveland, a little more comfortable?" And one of these patients I described in the book blurted out she'd had a stroke and no one knew she could talk at all. She blurted out, "I would really like some iced tea with lemon."
Yes.
Dr. Foley went out into the
Yes.
hallways and he got that iced tea with lemon and he brought it to her. And it was absolutely mesmerizing for all of his students to see that. And Bob Haney, who's in the book too, Bob is a great human being, a physician. Bob never forgot that. He said it shaped his entire career. Just seeing Dr. Joseph Michael Foley,
Hmm.
great Dr. Foley, um, approach a patient with that level of humility.
Hmm. Mm. I love that in the book. I remember that story as well. Let's let our listeners and viewers also reflect on that while we take our break. I am Dr. Alise Cortez. We're on the air with Dr. Stephen Post. He's a public speaker, social philosopher, and scholar in health and social sciences, philosophy, and global spirituality, as well as an opinion leader, mentor, and educator. We've been talking about a couple of the paths to pure unlimited love and also how to apply them in the real life. After the break, we'll continue the conversation. I will also continue and share a little something about my recent experience since we're talking about medicine and love. We'll be right back.
Dr. Alise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Alise to speak to your organization, please visit her at alisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Alise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Alise, send an email to Alise, A-L-I-S-E, at alisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. By now, you know that this program is dedicated to empowering and inspiring you along your journey to realize more of your potential. So if you want to learn more about how we can work together to help you elevate yourself through the Gusto Now Academy for leaders and individuals alike, make your way to gusto-now.com and then go to the training tab and you can find the academy there. If you are just joining us, my guest is Dr. Stephen Post. He's the author of Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the 7 Paths to Inner Peace. So I wanted to share just a little bit, as I mentioned before the break, since you know that I just recently had emergency surgery in December, obviously clearly unplanned. I got to experience and be on the other end of that kindness that you were talking about. And it definitely facilitated my healing. And I was often amazed at what the staff was doing, what the nurses did to try to make me comfortable, to listen to me. It was really amazing what they did. And I really got present too, because I really haven't had a stay like that in the hospital before. Just what a beautiful, caring profession medicine really is, especially when practiced with love and kindness. So I just wanted to share that. I was 6 days in the hospital and they really made it beautiful for me.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, it was.
Bravo.
It was amazing. So not that I want to go back in the near future or anything like that. I did go back to tell them all thank you once I was, upright and, moving about, but not that I want to return visit. Okay, so I cannot let you off this show because it just wouldn't be right if we didn't talk about one of your 7 paths, which of course is May You Follow Your Callings. We've already talked about that somewhat with your own journey. But a couple of things that I just wanted to call out from your book that really spoke to me that I would love for you to comment on. And this is why I want our listeners and viewers to get more present and connected to this, because if you don't know your purpose yet, or you're not connected to it, this just may help you. But, this idea that you talk about is that, a calling is more than just a job or an occupation. It's a feeling of being beckoned to draw on your abilities. And that is what I have experienced, that feeling of being compelled that I must do this, and that I was obedient to it. And you say, just as we have a unique that what we have is unique so just as we have a unique something about ourselves, there's this effervescent energy that can, if we don't live our purpose, it never really engages with the world. And then therefore we don't really get this opportunity to really reach more deeply into our potential. And that's what I wanted to speak to, is what I've learned is what for me is, and for others is, there's something about the notion of reaching our higher potential through our purpose that I think compels people about purpose, but they don't understand that, they just feel it. So could you speak a bit more to this notion of may you find and follow your callings in that vein?
Yeah, so to find your callings, we have a lot of young people who volunteer in this hospital, and I sometimes debrief with them. And they're doing all kinds of things for the first time. They're high school students, for example. They might be in this department for a week. They might be in the surgical suites for a week. They'll do different things because they want to try to explore and find out what they feel strongly about and what they feel draws on their talents. Mm-hmm. So volunteering is very important.
Yes.
Give and glow, is so key, because you can also discover yourself in that process.
Yes.
Now, as far as your question goes, Repeat that one more time.
It was the notion of there's what I called that in that little bit of your book
Right.
was the connection between when you really give yourself over to following your calling,
Right.
that you're really tapping into a deeper connection of potential within yourself. You're drawing on more of your deeper talents and energies, which calls forth a deeper sense of potential from yourself.
Yeah, because if you're just fitting in at your job, and a lot of education, I'm afraid to say, focuses on just getting people to a point where they can fit in with their jobs. But that's
Yes.
really not what you want. Montessori, in the Montessori system,
Mm-hmm.
believe that you want to educate people to discover their creativity.
Yeah.
When I was in Cleveland, I used to drive out about 45 minutes to the west on Route 90 to the birthplace of Thomas Edison,
Mm.
Milan, Ohio. He was thrown out of school when he was 11 years old because
Wow.
his mind was completely unfocused.
Mm.
And so he came home to his mother on the farm,
Yes.
and she said, "Thomas, what you can do is tinker in the barn." They had a big barn, it's a big red farm. It's still there. It's a museum. And she said, "Maybe you can be a light to the world." And you know what? He was.
Mm.
So he spent his whole life. He said, you know, he loved work. He loved what he was doing so much. It was such a calling for him. It was so fulfilling that it clearly brought out his best.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, in our world today, so much energy and time and talent is wasted and lost because people are not educated or encouraged to find their callings. So this is a little bit embarrassing, but I actually one day was in Penn Station and I looked around and there were all these wonderful young people, but they were just so morose. They were just head down, not going anyplace or doing anything, and they were smoking and whatever. And I walked up to one of them and I said, "Do you know that you are a miracle of the universe and a wonder of creation?" That was out of my mind, and maybe I was. But we talked about it for a while, and I told him that I think everybody has these special, unique gifts, and our calling in life is to find out how to utilize them in the service of others. And that's what Picasso said. That's what William Shakespeare said. If you look at philosophy and theology over the centuries, that's what it's all about. And if you can do that and stick with it and not be diverted or tempted away from it, you will have a glorious life.
Mm-hmm. I think that was another thing that stuck with me, Dr. Post, about the idea of calling was that it does speak to that you're calling from or pulling from your best talents. This is the best of you that you're putting forth. And I think that's another thing that I wanted to celebrate about that we don't often hear when we're talking about callings or purpose. So I wanted to celebrate that aspect too.
Oh yeah, it's so important. And having a calling will mean that you never have to work. I mean, there are drudgery elements to every job, including my own, believe it or not.
Sure.
But I always come to work with a smile. I love what I do. And because it's a calling, I'm endlessly creative.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
As I think you are, I'm just endlessly creative. I never feel depressed. I never feel slowed down because there's just so much I can do. I just love teaching these brilliant young people.
Yeah.
And it's such an honor. And, it makes me happy every day.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that wonderful? That's what I'm out to help more organizations create or create an environment for them to experience and step into as well. So I am 100% with you, Dr. Post. Let's take it on the road. Let's go.
Sure.
Okay. There are many other paths. I mean, you have 7 in your book, but I have to have you talk because I really align with this one as well. One of the paths is, may you cherish the gift of nature. There are so many people that I meet, Dr. Post, who say, I grew up in the cement jungle. I don't know what you mean. What do you mean nature? I am somebody who I go out and commune with the rain when it rains outside. The rain talks to me. So speak a little bit about this path, about may you cherish the gift of nature.
Psychiatrists now, without embarrassment, talk about nature deficit disorder.
Yep.
It's not formal as a diagnosis yet, but I think it will become that. And when you get out into nature, you shut down all of the negative emotions, the bitterness, the hostility, the resentment, and so forth, because the awe of nature, nature is so awesome and wondrous. This is why people at Berkeley like Keltner and others have written best-selling books on awe.
Yes.
And awe is such an important feeling to have. But unfortunately, by the way, when I was at Reed, Jobs slept on my floor and we read the autobiography of a yogi, just so you know that.
You mentioned that. I was like even more envious.
Yeah, but those were the days. And the thing about having all these wonderful white devices on every surface in your home is that it keeps us away from one another. We relate to each other through these devices, not person to person. I was up in Canada not too long ago, and I had a conversation with the guy who got the Nobel Prize for AI. He's now at the University of Toronto. And, he gave a very, very profound address when he received the prize, because he said he did not think that this artificial intelligence was going to be to the benefit of humanity. Now, it may be in some ways, even in a hospital, it can help you read a picture, an image, an X-ray, an MRI. But ultimately, if it's dehumanizing, it's counterproductive.
Yeah.
And a lot of our young people, I'm so sorry to say this, a lot of our young people are struggling because they've just been brought up on these devices. I was with a friend of mine, Nick Duncan, at a French restaurant in Manhattan some years ago. And there was a 3-generation family sitting next to us at a table. Grandma and grandpa, the parents, and the 2 kids. The 2 kids were completely locked in to their devices, and they were holding them up. They were held up on little stands.
Right.
And the grandparents, you could see, were trying to get through to their grandchildren with positive psychological messages about gratitude and kindness and creativity. But the kids didn't even bat an eye. And, that's what's happening, where we wonder why some of our children are suffering so much. Because they're not really in the real world. That we were evolved and that we developed our brains to connect person to person, not person through machine.
Right. Yeah, I echo that. In fact, one of your other pathways is may you raise kind children. And we don't have time to talk about that, but let's just put that out for our listeners and viewers. That's one of your pathways to pure unlimited love. So we've come to the end already. It goes by so fast, Dr. Post. The show is listened to by people around the world. What would you like to leave them with?
So I think that we're going through a challenging time right now. However, a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. Just FYI, my grandfather, Edwin Main Post, married a woman named Emily. Just saying that. And who told me not to put my peas on my fork with my thumb. But I preferred Emily Post to a lot of people. And she felt that we all need to get back to basics. We need to learn how to say thank you, how to be kind to one another, just in the simplest way, especially when we're young. But the one I really like is Eleanor Roosevelt. And one of her famous quotes: "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." And of course, you've got to have dreamers to do that. So everybody, you just need to start dreaming, stick with your dreams, don't give up on them ever, and you will live a fruitful, fulfilling life.
What a beautiful way to finish, Dr. Post. I am so delighted and happy to know you and to be enlarged and enlightened by your book and now sharing with our listeners and viewers around the world. Thank you for being on Working on Purpose.
Well, thank you, Alise, and keep up your great work. It's a very important mission.
Thank you. I think I will. I'm a bit addicted to this calling. Listeners and viewers, you're going to want to learn more about Dr. Stephen Post, the work that he does in his books, including this last one that he's written, Pure Unlimited Love. You can start by visiting the site unlimitedloveinstitute.org. That will give you a good start to learn about him. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on the air with Gray McDowell, talking about his book, Crafting a Corporate Camelot, Where Leadership Becomes Legend. He drew some alluring comparisons between the lessons we can learn about creating strong culture and leadership fit for today's times from really with legendary King Arthur and his leadership and his downfall. It's quite an interesting way to talk about it. Next, we'll be on the air with Monica Browning-Mitchell talking about her fresh research, where she explored the impacts of return to office mandates and ways to mitigate them in Fortune 500 companies. This is the topic many companies are still grappling with, and Monica has a seasoned executive herself. She's been drawing on this research to shed light on the viable ways forward. See you next week for another educational and nourishing conversation. Together, let's lean in and learn how to create destination workplaces that call forth the best from everyone, build our inspirational leadership capacity, and find ways to do business that betters the world. Let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Alise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.